So sit in a comfortable seat, sit in a posture that is really worthy of your divinity. We'll take a deep breath in together, and we'll exhale with the sound of Om together. Inhale. 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 And just listen once and then join in with me whenever you catch the melody. This is our offering to our Nama to Shiva, that part of ourselves that is eternal consciousness, awareness, and peace. You might think of it like a love song to our own true nature. Join me. Beautiful. Allow your mouth to open, especially when you sing the ah sound. And I'd like to invite every one of us to just kind of relax back into our seat a little bit more. Just soften a little into your own voice. All together. Beautiful. Try smiling. Yeah. Beautiful. Gradually building to your full voice. everyone with full voice, full heart. One more at full voice. Let love use your voice. A little softer, turning in.
Welcome to Satsang, everyone. Ye ban rakho bhaiya. We'll take some of the other questions that we didn't have a chance to take over the last couple of nights, and then open it to any questions that are here. How do I deal with toxic relatives? Manipulative, controlling, and negative, and a spouse who doesn't stand up for me. The sadhana of a joint family. First of all, whether it's relatives, whether it's colleagues, whether it's neighbors, having that toxicity, that controllingness, that negativity is always difficult. There's some situations that we can change, so you can change your friend circle. But there's some that are more difficult to change. Your relatives, obviously. But colleagues also, at a job you like, it's not so easy to necessarily leave a job just because you don't like the colleagues. Your neighbors, you're not going to move houses. So whether we're stuck with people in our house or in the houses around us, in our workplace, that toxicity is always Always a challenge. What's most important to realize, though, is not to engage with it. When someone is sick, as people who are toxic to us are, and as we always emphasize, if someone is personally in joy and in peace and in love with life, they're going to spread that, they're going to share that, they're going to bring love to those around them. And if what someone is spreading is misery and toxicity, it's because that's what they've got going on inside. But we don't have to engage with them on that level. What happens for us a lot is we take things that happen as sort of about us. Now, it's natural sometimes. Someone looks in your face and insults you. It certainly feels like it's about you. But when we're able to take it a step back and realize it's not about us, it's actually about them, then it doesn't impact on us on that deep emotional level. We're able to realize that if someone is hurting us with their words, with their actions, with how they're living and trying to control us, it's because of how they are stuck in their own lives. Now, in a joint family, this comes up more often than perhaps it should, but it seems to be a common thread. You walk into a home already that's sort of set with its ways. You walk into it set in your ways. What ends up happening inevitably is we've got a struggle of control, we've got a struggle of importance, we've got a struggle of whose way. And again, of course, this translates into workplace as well, but it's more in the family. Which way do we load a dishwasher? Which way do we cook food? How much salt do we put in the food? Who does what around the house? Now, what's most important to realize here is in order for there to be a fight, in order for there to be a conflict, both people have to engage. It's very, very difficult to have conflict on just one side. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult. If someone keeps trying to create conflict with you, and you stay at peace, it's going to be difficult for them to keep doing that. The way that conflict works is we also react. They react, then we react. Then they react, then we react. And it builds. And so what we have to do is always ask ourselves, what's more important? To be right here or to be at peace here? My dad is a divorce attorney, and that's just what he does. He spends all day long helping couples get divorced. And he's been married to my mom for a very, very long time, and is a very wise man in general, and has a teaching that he gives, which was always very funny because he doesn't consider himself a spiritual man at all, and yet so much of that which he has learned through his life divorcing couples, and what Puja Swamiji teaches from a state of enlightenment and divine awareness, there's so much overlap that whenever they meet, they always laugh about how from two completely different places they've actually come to very similar truths. And the teaching that my dad gives on this is he always says to people who are just getting married or going through difficulty in their marriage, he says, you've really only got two choices in a marriage. You can either be right or you can be married. And those are your only options. And this is very, very much what we get from the spiritual side. Pujya Swamiji speaks quite a bit about a teaching at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, after Lord Krishna has shown himself to Arjuna, after Lord Krishna has given all of the teachings to Arjuna. At the end, he basically says to Arjuna, I've taught you everything now. I've told you everything. But you have free will. Whatever you do, it's up to you. And Arjuna says, I will do whatever you say. And Pujya Swamiji takes that teaching. The Sanskrit of it is Kadishye Vachanam Tava. And he takes that and he gives that as mantras to newlyweds. I will do whatever you say. As the mantra for a happy married life. And this is true whether it's the spouse, whether it's the mother-in-law, the daughter-in-law, whatever it may be. Really what the teaching is about it's not about self-imposed slavery. It's not about oppression or suppression. It's not about becoming anyone's doormat, which inevitably is always the follow-up question to this. It's about simply recognizing peace. Peace is more important than what we eat for dinner. Is it Chinese food? Is it Italian food? Is it Mexican food? Is it Indian food? Is it paranthas? Is it rotis? Is it puris? There's none of that that's more important than peace in the home. There's no way of making a bed or loading a dishwasher or arranging things on a cupboard that's more important than peace in the home. And that's the stuff usually that fights are of. When you actually get families together and you say, all right, really, what are we fighting over? They almost never can remember actually what started a fight. Because always what comes up within the first 10 minutes is, and you've been doing this for years, you never give me my way, you always are controlling. It's never about what's here in this moment. It's always about the past. And this is where, whether you're dealing with colleagues or relatives or neighbors, spouses, friends, whatever it is, the minute in any discussion or argument you turn what has just happened into an accusation of 5 years ago, 10 years ago, your whole life, it's over. Because we can have a discussion about right now. I was putting away the dishes, you came in, you yelled at me, whatever may have just transpired as absolutely silly and superficial as it can get, or as serious as it can get. We can actually have a discussion about that in the moment. But the minute someone says, and you always do this, you're always like this, you never, the minute any of those comments come in, the discussion is over. It's no longer about finding peace right now. It then degenerates into, either quickly or slowly, I hate you, and you've got slammed doors in rooms, you've got slammed doors to the house, you've got slammed doors to cars as someone drives away, whatever it may be. And so this is where, when we look at the toxicity as came in the question, the negativity, the controllingness, is to really ask yourself, all right, what in this is more important than peace? Now that doesn't mean that we never stand up for ourselves. It doesn't mean that we never say, actually, this is important to me. There will be aspects that are important. I'm a vegetarian. No, I won't cook meat for you. There are certain things that may be there in a home, in a family, in an office place that you're not prepared to give in on. And this isn't about give in on things. It's about recognize whether in that situation being right is more important than being at peace. And the last piece of this really is to recognize the impact of what we are contributing to that situation. Because all of this is energetic. And when we talk about people being toxic, inevitably, there's an interaction of their energy with my energy. So the question becomes, can I adjust where I'm coming at this from to make this interaction less toxic? And if not, can I get out of the situation? Because toxicity is not something that's good for anyone to live. I mean, if you discover that your home sits upon a piece of land where there's toxic gas coming out of the land, or there's something you've got a nuclear waste disposal site nearby, and there's toxicity in the air. Well, all right, the first best thing to do, can you treat it? Is there some way to work with your municipality and fix that situation so you can stay in your home? Are there things you can do to your immune system to bolster your immune system so you're not as impacted by that? But ultimately, eventually, if nothing else works, you may absolutely have to figure a way out of the situation. It's far from ideal, obviously. But we're not relegated to live lives in which our minds, our hearts, our self is poisoned by our air, by our land, by that which the wind is carrying on it or is emanating from the soil, that which is coming from the people in the houses next to us. I mean, if you lived next door to a drummer, a really bad drummer, who, for example, worked, the night shift, came home every night from his night shift at 2:00 in the morning, and the only way to get tired enough to go to sleep was to practice the drums, and every night at 2:00 in the morning, you put in the earplugs, you've soundproofed your room. I mean, you do everything you can do. But there may eventually come a time in which you need to work out options. And going back specifically to the question of why does my spouse not stick up for me? It's a tough one. What I would say is it's not the spouse's job. When you marry someone, unless in the job description, in the marriage vows you take, is, I shall always fight your battles for you. I shall always stick up for you in every circumstance, even if it's against my mother, my sister, my father, my brother. That's a difficult situation. It's a lose-lose situation, of course, and there's no cookie-cutter right answer of when a spouse should stick up for his or her spouse against his or her parents or siblings. Has to be an individual situation. Ultimately, the goal should be that we don't have two sides of a battle, that we don't have this side and that side, such that no one has to choose sides, no one has to stick up for anyone. And that becomes the goal, is how can we all together as a family, and this is where in Indian culture where extended families are so common, this has always been the role of religious leaders, actually. It's a world that was not dependent on, psychologists and psychiatrists and therapists up until relatively recently. It was a world in which people would go, and they'd go to the family spiritual leader, and they'd seek blessings, and they'd seek help, and they'd seek advice, or there would be an elder in the community who would help come in and bring peace in the home. But every single side has to collectively decide we're going to choose peace. It cannot be any single one person's responsibility. Collectively as a family, we have to decide to choose peace over being right. And so, specifically to the questioner, I would say, as long as you are considering your family members toxic, as long as you're considering your family members negative and expecting your spouse to stand up and fight for you against them, you're in a lose-lose situation. Because in your mind, you've already created two sides of a battle in a war. And if in your mind you can shift the situation to being one of the opportunity and the possibility to choose peace, to energetically bring peace to that situation, to neutralize the toxicity. Scientists have got all of these anti-venom, right? You get bit by a snake. If they know exactly what type of snake it is, they can give you exactly the right anti-venom that will neutralize it. Well, this is where our spiritual practice becomes so helpful. All right, someone has ego issues, someone has anger issues, someone has competition issues, somebody has jealousy issues, somebody has an inferiority complex, somebody has whatever they may have. Rather than just labeling it toxic, that has just turned yourself into a victim. You are the victim of poisoning, no fault of your own, nothing you can do, just sit there and die unless your spouse is going to take care of you. But that's not the way to live. We're not victims of our situation. We're active participants in it. And so understand where the other person is coming from. Not everyone has every single problem. Some people have anger issues, some people have control issues, some people have ego issues, some people have jealousy issues, some people have complexes. Don't speak to them respectfully enough. Maybe, they want to make sure that you respect them. Some people want to make sure that you do things their way, whatever their thing may be. Understand it. And figure out what is the anti-venom to that. And can you be strong enough and grounded enough in yourself that you're able to give that? That you're able to give up your specific way of this specific thing to create that anti-venom, to neutralize that poison. And then meditate. Here we have, up in the hills right here from Rishikesh, is a very sacred temple called Nilkant, which literally means blue throat. And it's in reference to Lord Shiva, who literally drank the poison when the ocean was being churned for divine nectar. But before the nectar came, the poison came. But in order to keep churning, something had to be done with that poison. Nobody was prepared to drink it, of course. Then they would die on the inside. But if nobody took it, then it would just come out and it would kill the world. So Lord Shiva took it in but held it in his throat. And that Nilkand literally means blue throat. And came and sat here and meditated. And the teaching of that is, we don't swallow it. We don't allow it to hurt us. Oh my God, why me? But we also don't spit it back out on the world around us. But that ability to just be present with it, be the anti-venom to it, that neutralizes it, like Lord Shiva does with his throat. And if we can do that, then not only do we neutralize that toxicity, but very frequently we actually have the power to turn it into love. If you and I are holding opposite ends of a cord and we're both pulling on it, there's a lot of tension in that cord, literal physical tension in that cord. But if just one of us lets go, even if the other is still holding on, 100% of the tension in that cord dissipates. So a fight like that does not actually need both sides to let go. It needs only one side to let go. It needs one side to say, I choose peace. I choose love. And automatically, 100% of that tension dissipates. And so if we can be the one to be strong enough to say, I choose peace, okay, you're the smarter. Okay, you're the one who knows best. Okay, this is the right way to load the dishwasher. Okay, this is the right way to do this. Okay, who cares? I mean, really. 99% of the stuff that we're fighting about, who cares? And then what you'll find is when that 1% comes about something that actually matters, it's not same old, just this fighting. There's actually a point. Your words have weight. People understand. Vese, she never raises her voice. Vese, she goes along with everything. This must be something serious. And so what you are saying at that time then actually carries weight. And that power is within us. But we have to choose, I will be the one to let go of this cord of tension. Most of us think, let them let go. Why me? Why should I be the one? And this is what kills us. We all, literally, should race to be the one who can let go of that tension first. Race to be the one to say, I'm sorry first. A rule of life pretty much is, the one who says, I'm sorry first, is the one who falls asleep first at night. The one who can't say, I'm sorry, is the one for whom sleep doesn't come very easily. Let it go. Choose peace. So, before taking any of the others that came in advance, I am happy to open it up to any questions that are here. Yes?
Ma'am, 2 lines wrote in Ramayana. This Dhol Gawar Shudra Pashu Nari is a pardon ki adhikari. And second thing is that why Devi Sita only gave fire test? Why both Bhagwan Ram and Devi Sita didn't give fire test?
When we start looking at questions and issues from the scriptures, it becomes an interesting balance. Because on the one hand, that which is scripture is eternal, right? When we say, as I was saying on the banks of Ganga, Sanatan Dharma, it has to be eternal. It has to be universally applicable. Otherwise, it's not Sanatan. And we have situations that are time-specific, culturally specific, and you've raised an interesting one. At the end of the Ramayana, or near the end of the Ramayana rather, after the war, when Ma Sita has to go through this test of fire, she goes through it not Bhagwan Ram, because the test was a test of purity. The test was a test raised because of some very unenlightened, suspicious washer person in the village who raised the issue of, look, she's lived with the Rakshas for so long. How do we know she's still pure? Now, that's what the test was given for. How do we know she's still pure? But what becomes more interesting, for me at least, afterwards, is she passed the test. So why she was given it, I wouldn't worry too much about that. Meaning, in our lives, tests come. Why wasn't Ram given it? Well, in that specific circumstance, he had never been in that situation. The test was given for a very specific test. But to me, what's interesting is she passes the test. She's shown to be perfectly pure. Nonetheless, she gets left in the forest. And it brings up very, very interesting questions. And we could go not only all night tonight, but we could go all night for the rest of the month on these topics. We could look at the role of women in the scriptures. I mean, entire courses, books, PhD dissertations are done on this stuff. What I would say in the context of here in Satsang is it is a symbol of decisions and choices that we make in life, that we have to make in life, that are not the ones that feel the most pleasurable for us, but that are those that are seen as in the best service of our Dharma. So remember that Lord Ram, in the Ramayana, I mean in general, but specifically in the Ramayana, is not there playing the role of just a husband. It's not just a love story of a husband and a wife and here's what happens. Lord Ram is king. Lord Ram as king has just as much responsibility to the subjects of his kingdom as he does to his own family members. And for me, the way that I take that teaching, that aspect, is there are things in life that happen where your attachment to a specific person, your attachment to a specific relationship, your attachment to a specific role in your life pulls you in one direction. But the call of your greater Dharma pulls you in a different direction. And that, for me, is the take-home teaching of that. Is, yeah, there are times when it's not easy. There are times when even Lord Ram, even the divine on earth, has to make decisions that are not the ones that make you the happiest in the moment, that are not in line with your relationship as husband, as father, that are not in relationship to your identity as her husband, their father, but that rather are in service of your greater dharma. And they don't always feel good and they're not always fun. And we talk about this a lot when we talk about Arjuna on the battlefield. Similar situation, different details, similar situation. Not fun. Yes, here you are having to go to battle. Those are your family members on the other side. But in the service of your greater dharma, your bigger dharma, your higher dharma, to something beyond a few individual relationships, you are being called in this moment to make a different decision. And that, for me, is the only take-home message. Given the context of the rest of the scriptures, given the context of everything else we know about the teachings of Sanatana Dharma, that's the only possible real take-home for us, living today, living our lives, that makes any sense to me, is you're going to have to make decisions in life. And they're not all going to be fun. They're not all going to be in line with what you identify as on your individual relationship basis. They're not all going to be in line with what your attachments are, with what gives you pleasure. But you're being called to choose Dharma over those, over attachments, over those identities. And that's what the teaching is about. Yes. And then Ed. Yes.
What is the concept of atonement or expiation and how to go about it?
Can you repeat that? The concept of?
Atonement.
Atonement, okay.
Or expiation, I believe that is not, and how to go about it.
Okay, well, atonement or expiation literally is for a sin. I mean, we atone for the sins we have done. In the Indian spiritual philosophy, in Sanatana Dharma, it's not a sense of you are a sinner, you have sinned, here's what you need to atone for it. It's a matter of you have committed mistakes out of ignorance. Not because you're bad, not because you're a sinner, but out of ignorance. Whether you did them out of anger, out of lust, out of greed, out of ego, all of those are manifestations of our ignorance, of our false identification with this body, with this self, with this identity. And the way out of that is wisdom, light. When we talk, for example, about a guru, well, a guru is literally one who brings light to our darkness. A guru is not one who flagellates us. Brings out the whip, is going to, whip us enough times that we are satisfactorily atoned, that we've been sufficiently punished for our sins and our slate is clean. It's not a tradition that believes in that. It's a tradition that believes in light to darkness. if your darkness can become light, you will no longer act out of darkness, out of ignorance. And that's why we talk about liberation, not salvation. You won't find gurus, saints, seers, sages talking about saving you or attaining salvation. There's nothing to be saved from other than my own ignorance. I become liberated from it. I become free from it. That's why moksha, this highest ideal of moksha, translates not as sufficiently flagellated, saved, properly punished, paid their dues, but as free. Translation of moksha is you're free, you're liberated. From what? From the darkness, from your ignorance. With an awareness that when you're free of the ignorance, you're going to make the right decisions in the future. And that's the atonement that matters. As we know, I mean, anybody who's ever been hurt by someone knows, that person simply saying, "I'm sorry," means something only if you have reason to believe they're not going to turn around and do it again. If someone hits you, or cheats on you, or lies to you every week, eventually you're going to get tired of their apologies. Eventually you're going to say, I don't believe you anymore. These apologies don't carry any weight here. The apology only carries weight when it comes with a sincere change of heart. And so the atonement, it's not about how many times do I have to say I'm sorry, how many days do I need to fast, how many, what do I need to do to be properly atoned. It's about how can my heart change so that I never do that again. And when my heart changes, then I'm free. Puja Swamiji always says, God doesn't open your old files. The minute you actually go to God, surrendering whatever mistakes you've made, the ignorance in which you've made them, with the change of heart that says, God, grant me not atonement, not free me from my past karmas, but free me from the ignorance that led me to commit them. When we come to Ganga and we have a bath in Ganga, it's not about I bathe in Ganga, I'm free, and then I go out and do it again. And then I'll just come back and bathe in Ganga again. That's not how it works. It's not a get out of jail free card. The bath in Ganga, the purity that comes is because it purifies our mind, it purifies our heart. And then who we are is different. And so we're not the same person who committed those acts. That's the atonement. Okay? Good. Ed.
So you were talking about the churning of the ocean, and Puja Swamiji talked about that yesterday. If you want the nectar, you got to deal with
Poison comes first, yes.
Then you were just talking about the Dharma, and sometimes Dharma pulls you. So when you're in a place in that life where the Dharma's pulling and the stuff is churning, but you still, she
Mhm.
and you can't just go off and meditate. How do you balance that, like showing up in your life to your commitments, your duties, and yet still allowing that to unfold?
Great. So yeah, we can't all just go and sit in Nilkand and meditate with the blue throat. Well, here's the beautiful thing about Shiva, which you may have heard me speak about at other times when we've talked about Shiva, and it gives us really the teaching of how do we then move through our lives, how do we show up, right? So we have this beautiful image of Shiva meditating, the one on the banks of Ganga, that image of Shiva sitting there in meditation. But then we also have the image of the Nataraj, the cosmic dancer, the Lord of Yoga. We have the image of the Shivlinga, that infinite presence. And this is really the teaching, is the churning is on. It's happening. Poison has come up, maybe it's still coming up, waiting for the nectar. As I move through the world, can I hold in my awareness, hold in my consciousness that meditative state? The meditation is not just about I sit cross-legged all the time with my eyes closed, which is where we have the different images of Shiva. It's a state of being. The meditation that we have is that state of connecting to that which is infinite. And sometimes we connect by going deep within to find it within. Sometimes we connect to that which is out. So I could open my eyes and meditate on Ganga as she flows. I could open my eyes and meditate on an image of the divine. I could open my eyes and meditate on a candle flame. I can close my eyes and chant my mantra. So when we talk about that connection with the infinite, it doesn't actually matter whether you access it through this way or through this way, because you're going to the same place. And so how, as I'm moving through the world, can I move through it trying to access the infinite? And it's a huge challenge, of course. But the benefit of undertaking such a challenge is A, it gives your mind, which loves something to churn on, something much more beneficial to churn on than the poison that's coming up. Gives your mind something much more beneficial to churn on than the details of the drama. How can I stay trying to focus on the infinite? In the dance, in the yoga. So remember, when we're talking about yoga, right? Yoga means union. But when we talk about the fullness of yoga, we've got all 8 limbs. And so it brings us up all the way through how we're acting in the world. With our words, with our thoughts, with our practice, with our mind, with our tongue, with our bodies. How through all of that can that be an expression of unity? And it's really hard. It's really hard to feel a sense of unity with, a Microsoft Excel document, for example. Right? It's hard to feel a sense of unity. I mean, if you were a mechanic, it's hard to feel a sense of unity with a carburetor. Or with the guy whose carburetor it is, or the car that it belongs to. So I'm not saying it's easy by any means, but simply the intention of it changes the focus as I'm doing it. And if I can't actually find unity with the carburetor or the spreadsheet, Can I find unity in my breath as I'm doing it? Can I find unity in the flow of my hand as it's writing or typing or screwing a wrench? Can there at least be a fluidity and a unity in my breath, in my words, in my actions? And can I be aware of that? Can I be focused? You know, it's like in so many of those meditation retreats where they have mindful eating, mindful walking. Well, there's nothing particularly spiritual about eating a raisin or a grape or a Hershey's Kiss or, you know, whatever you may be eating in one of those. But the teaching is, with full attention, anything can become a practice of meditation, including the raisin, including the Hershey's Kiss, including the walk from your room to the dining hall. There's a beautiful teaching by Thich Nhat Hanh who says, you know, in our work day, where do we find the time for meditation? You know, somebody had asked him, I've got busy job and a company and buildings and, you know, busy roads, and where do I find the time for meditation? And he said, well, when you walk from one room to another room, when you cross the street, certainly you have the opportunity to do walking meditation. You can at least walk meditatively across the street. You can walk meditatively from your office to the conference room. You can bring the awareness to the breath as you're doing that work. He has actually an entire book called Work on how whatever we do can be meditation. And so the goal becomes, how can that, because the meditation is the answer to the turning. But the last piece that I would give you is, those of us from the West, I mean all of us, but it feels to me from my experience and from that which I've read, that for some reason those of us from the West have it more than those from the East, which is kind of an addiction to our own drama. And not a bad addiction. I mean, it's not like, you know, a heroin addiction or something. But we do tend to indulge ourselves a little bit more in the drama of our own lives than people from the East tend to. There tends to be much more of a sense in the East of just agebaro, move forward, let it go. And there tends to be much more of a focus in the West of, let's process this. Let's look at this for the next 20 years. Maybe there's an angle I haven't yet looked at this from. And it does tend to be cultural. And so the only caveat that I would give you is, if you have poison, if you've got a dropper full of poison and you put it in this glass of water and I drink it, I'm going to get sick and maybe die, depending on what type of poison it is. But if you take that same dropper of poison and you put it in the ocean, and then I take a glass and fill it up from the ocean, it'd be salty. But other than that, chances are I wouldn't have too much of a negative reaction to it. And our contracted sense of self from this love affair we have with our own dramas and our own histories and our own lives and the working of our own psyche and psychology tends to make that experience of the self so small that the churning becomes us. The poison becomes us. And a lot of times when you've looked at it from, 95% of every possible angle that you can look at it from, the answer becomes, can I just expand the self? Can I just let it be there? Can I just not be so enraptured with it? Can I be bigger than that? Because there's so much of us that isn't the poison, but we do tend to really wrap ourselves around it. And so I'm not at all advocating denial or suppression or repression or avoidance, but simply to know when I've acknowledged something honestly and when I'm just having a love affair with the drama of myself. And I need to just let that go and expand my awareness, expand my consciousness, so that the poison is there, but I'm also there, and it's not part of my awareness anymore. And we're able to just say, yeah, it's okay. Yes.
Is it okay?
Last question for tonight, yeah.
Is it okay to love outside of marriage?
Is it okay to love outside of marriage? Well, it depends by what standard of okay you are looking at. Meaning, I'm sorry?
Not the lust or not.
No, I understand. My point is, there's lots of different ways we can look. So you could look legally, right? You can look morally. Dharmic, exactly. So from a dharmic perspective, here's the good news. In Kali Yuga, which is the era we are living in now, one of the benefits of Kali Yuga, otherwise it's known as this era of darkness, the time of darkness. But one of the benefits of Kali Yuga is you accrue fruits of karma for good thoughts that don't necessarily materialize into good action. So you have a good intention to do something, but you weren't able to actually manifest it. Nonetheless, you actually get the fruits of good karma for that. But you have a negative thought. You think, God, I'd really love to kill that person. But you don't do it. You don't get negative karmic fruit from that. And according to Puja Swamiji, that's sort of God's way of, giving us a handicap. It's like if you're a golfer and you're gonna play golf with someone who's much better than you are, they give you, a little bit of a handicap that gets you sort of on equal par with them. So that it's kind of God's way of saying, I know it's Kali Yuga. I know you're all going to be overcome with ego and greed and lust and all of these things. All right, I'm going to give you kind of a head start, which is, if you can keep your mind focused on good things, you'll get credit for it. But when your mind slips, I won't penalize you. As long as you have the discipline not to act on it. The dilemma becomes that very frequently, that which we think, if not today, if not tomorrow, eventually tends to lead to actions. Now, specifically looking at love outside of marriage. So, no, you're not going to accrue negative karma for the thought. On the other hand, what it does is it pulls you away from the person you're married to. Every minute of your life that you're spending thinking about someone else, wishing you were with someone else, is a minute that you're not spent connecting to the person you're with. And so what that does is it creates a chasm between you. And so even though you haven't cheated, your heart has come away. Your heart has become distant. And what that does is it pulls the love out of the marriage. And that becomes the problem. And so try as much as possible not to let that happen. Try as much as possible to keep bringing the love back into the marriage. Because if you're looking at it from a position of dharma, and it's, I'm going to stay married, I'm going to stay with this person, I'm not going to act on it, then why let the mind go? I mean, if you know the body's not going to go, why let the mind go? Why let the mind be separate from the body? Why create that inner conflict? Even if you don't act on it, you're just going to make yourself miserable. In the name of love, you're going to create conflict in yourself. There's going to be resentment, there's going to be longing, there's going to be yearning, there's going to be frustration, there's going to be disappointment. And of course, your husband's going to feel it and know it, even if he doesn't know why. And then you lose that marriage is not just about having someone help with the dishes or, using fewer bricks. So we've got 2 people or 4 people in one house rather than in individual houses using fewer bricks or less wood. It's not about saving on building costs. The point of our relationships is union, not just of bodies, not just of bank accounts, but of hearts, of souls. And as long as your mind and heart is somewhere else, it's not here. And what that means is that you've created sort of a prison for yourself. And so while it may not be wrong on either a legal or even a dharmic level, it's setting yourself up. You're very young. And it's setting yourself up for years and decades of internal conflict, of internal strife. If you don't act on it, you'll feel repressed and suppressed. If you do act on it, you'll feel guilty, and then of course you get the bitter fruits of that karma. So it becomes kind of a lose-lose situation. What I would say is, can you expand your love within your marriage? Can you take that energy and focus it on finding more and more to love about your husband? Because that ultimately is what's going to bring you the real peace and the real contentment. Because it's very difficult for the heart to be one place and the body to be someplace else. It's not an ideal way to live. So try to keep the heart and the body in the same place as much as possible. Okay? Yes. Wonderful. Have a beautiful rest of your evening. And we'll see you all tomorrow.